Dave Cooper Live. We connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Dave Cooper Live. Thankfully, this great country of ours has endless ideas on how to solve housing affordability. We have startups, we have innovative building systems, modular construction, automation, AI, new materials, new financing models, zoning reform, and billions of dollars looking for solutions. But there is a much harder question to answer. What actually works at scale? Because an innovation that builds 10 homes is interesting. An innovation that can help deliver 10,000 homes starts changing an industry. And today's guest has one of the most interesting vantage points from which to answer that question. Clark Ivory is the CEO of Ivory Homes, a company that has helped build more than 25,000 homes and thousands of apartments. But Clark didn't stop with building. He co-founded Ivory Innovations to search for, support, and ultimately help scale solutions to one of the biggest challenges facing communities across this country: housing affordability. And today, Ivory Innovations has evaluated more than 1,000 housing solutions spanning construction, finance, policy, and regulatory reform. But here is where the conversation gets especially interesting. They're not simply studying these ideas, they're putting them into real-world scenarios. So today, we're going to ask and talk with Clark, who has learned from decades of building years of evaluating innovation, deploying capital, and watching promising ideas collide with the realities of land, permitting, financing, labor, and construction. Because solving for affordable housing is more than finding cool building tech. It's about proving what actually works and scaling it. But before we do any or all of this, we got to give a few words to our supporting members. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Every build deserves comfort that lasts. Cobalt Creed helps builders and offsite manufacturers reach new levels of indoor air quality and efficiency. With their proprietary small duct, high-velocity central heating and cooling system, quiet, compact, powerful, Cobalt Creed, building comfort into every building. Learn more at cobaltcreed.com. All right. Again, thank you to all the supporting members that we have out there. We couldn't do any or all of this without all of you, and we'd love to see your name in the supporting ticker down below and all over our website and everywhere else that Dave Cooper Live is. All right, a few housekeeping things here. Let me get it up on the screen. We're always looking for that next guest on the Dave Cooper Live show. If you're an innovator, you're trying to build something better, you're trying to do it better, you're trying to solve for affordability or even workforce development, we want to hear from you. We want to talk to you. Doesn't just have to be construction, can be data centers or whatever you like. And two more little housekeeping things. You got to join us in Toronto. That's right. We are a media partner of the Building Show in Toronto, and we'll be broadcasting live from the Building Show in Toronto, December 2nd through the 4th. We will be at booth 4411 in the North Hall, and it's just not a booth. We have an entire stage in the middle of the floor, and we have thousands of square feet where you can display your goods. If it's whether it's offsite construction, fintech, we don't care. And we also are the media partner for Mass Timber Plus this year in Philadelphia, October 6th through the 8th. So we'd love to see you join us there as well. And if you love what we're doing and you want to support us, there's a QR code in the top left corner there. Please click on that with your phone. We'd love to have you support the Dave Cooper Live show. All right. So without further ado, this next guest has been building for decades. And when I say decades, not just building an infrastructure around the cities, the state that he lives in, but also helping drive innovation forward. I'm super excited to welcome Clark Ivory to the show. Clark, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Excellent, Dave. Thanks for having us on, and love what you're doing to help people look at solutions to this really big problem.
Listen, it's all about everybody out there. It's what you're doing. You guys are putting in the work. I just have the opportunity and the privilege of having all of you guys come on the show and talk about it. So Clark Ivory, right? Clark, your Ivory Homes has been Utah's #1 home builder for 30 years. 30 years, the #1 home builder. You've built 25,000 homes. You've built multifamily homes. You started Ivory Innovations with your daughter, who is a founder as well, Abby. What inspired all this? Because you were already developing and building amazing products across the state, and here you are. You're just taking on more, like most serial entrepreneurs that I know out there.
Well, I think what happened is these big challenges on affordability were all focused on the coast through the 90s and into the early 2000s. I mean, none of us that were inland had big issues with housing affordability. It was just sort of the Wild West out here, and everything seemed to be going okay. And we were relatively affordable compared to other states. And then all of a sudden, we became a super high growth state. Utah became one of the fastest growing states in the country. And our population was booming. The number of jobs that were locating here was on the rise faster than anywhere else. And then the next thing you know, our housing just does not keep up. And I looked at this in 2017 super hard, and I just said, you know what? Utah has got to do something different. How are we going to figure this out? And what are we going to do so that we don't just become another permanently super expensive state that no one can afford to buy a house in? And so we started talking. My daughter was working at the University of Utah for a group called Sorensen Impact. She was really into impact investing, and they were looking at all kinds of program-related investments that would really move the needle in other areas. And I said, Abby, let's take what you've been learning and let's start to apply it to what we need to do for housing. And so we started to brainstorm on that. And we thought we needed to get the best experts involved. So we turned to Kent Colton, who'd been the previous, executive director of the National Home Builders. He was a good friend and family member, uncle to my wife. And we talked to Kent and we said, help us put together the best group of really good housing experts. And we ended up including, folks from all over: the Urban Institute, Harvard's Joint Centers for Housing Studies, the Turner Institute at Berkeley, the best modular academic in Ryan Smith, who's now at the University of Arizona. And we just tried to bring together a group that was really going to help us understand what could be done. But it was interesting, as I left meeting with Chris Herbert back in Cambridge, I went to the Harvard bookstore and I found a book called The Medici Effect. And I know, Dave, you've sort of focused on this book in the past, but I read this thing and I thought, we can't look at this thing through the eyes of the experts only. We need to look at it through different glasses, different lenses. And it made me really think, let's get new, fresh, eyes on this thing. And so I said, besides starting something that's going to include, the experts, let's include the up and coming, the rising generation. And so we decided to house what we were doing at the University of Utah. And we got Hack a House cranking, which was to get the young people involved in just the most innovative answers to interesting challenges. And now we have like 70 universities that participate every fall with Hack a House. And we're getting lots of young people involved. But if we can develop these people that are the best and the brightest to actually go and make a difference in housing, I think it's one of the most important things we can do. And Abby's really led that program side. And then we have sort of our practical side where we're actually building and putting into practice some of the best ideas. We have currently 7 really focused affordable housing projects going on right now as part of our nonprofit. And so we're still building a lot of market rate homes and we're still building apartments, but our nonprofit is a big part of what we do now. And we've reached out to over the last, since 2018, and we have learned a lot from a lot of good people all across this country. So I'm happy to be on and happy to talk about whatever you want, Dave.
Oh, I love it. And we're going to jump into some of the workforce topic there, because the biggest thing is how do we get people interested in what we do? How do we get them off their iPads, out of their Fortnite game and back into the trades and show them, hey, we got all the coolest tech in the world here. But we'll get into that in a minute. Clark, between Ivory Homes and Ivory Innovations, you've had exposure to both sides of this industry, actually building tens of thousands of homes, like you said, while also evaluating more than 1,000 potential housing solutions that are out there. And after seeing all that, what do you believe housing affordability conversations is still getting wrong? Are we missing something?
As we look at where the answers need to come, we sort of break it down into 3 buckets. And one is, regulatory reform and policy that needs to be changed in order to get out of the way and allow, great things to happen. The second is construction and design. Yeah, there's techniques, there's new building systems, there's all kinds of innovations that can happen there. And the third thing is finance. We haven't really had substantial innovation in finance since the 30-year mortgage, which is generations ago. So what are we going to do to make it more affordable in the area of finance? And there's a lot of different ways to approach that. But to answer your question, the thing that can move the needle most immediately is making a difference in policy or regulatory reform that allows supply to increase more rapidly and in a way that's more reasonable and more efficient. And so the challenge is we are such a, we're this nation of 50 states and every state has a different approach and you can't legislate, nationally or federally. So what we're going to find is that some states are going to figure it out better than others. Our state is the 10th most expensive state in the country by median home price. Wow. So we better put a focus on it. We're really the only red state of those 10 most expensive states. So it doesn't make sense that we can't go figure this out. But what we've got to do, I think, to start off is focus on policy in our state that will impact the municipalities and the counties throughout the state, because they're fighting tooth and nail. The challenge is that there's too much, antagonism at all these approval meetings throughout all these municipalities. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you don't like a project if it's in your backyard. And you're going to argue the same arguments. Traffic, kids are going to be, put in harm's way. There's going to be all kinds of crime brought into our neighborhood. All these things are just consistently the arguments, and they're not rational, they're emotional. And what are we going to do? Well, I can tell you, most of the mayors and city council folks that are really caring about this issue, they say, give us some cover. And the only way you can give them cover is if a state starts doing some things. And we've seen some states do that. In fact, we've recognized some of those states that have really made a step forward, and we're trying to get our state to move along as well.
Yeah, NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard is what everybody loves to call it, but they also don't want that. But then there's also the affordability side, right? We're not building enough. There's, we got homeless on the street, so on and so forth. And it kind of leads me into, the Ivory Prize in innovation. What actually separates interesting innovation, finance, policy change, or even the system? When does an interesting innovation become scalable in any one of those areas? I mean, you've seen so much of it. What is it that can make the smallest change? Because policy is a hard change.
It's a hard change, and it has to happen one state at a time, one municipality at a time. But we've actually tried to pull together some of the best, ideas, and we put them into a little book. It's my only plug for the deal, but we're not trying to make money on this. We're just making it available at ivoryinnovations.org. But this is the little book, we call it, because it's not really thick, but it has some really good ideas from municipalities across the country that have figured it out. And this has been the most impactful thing for us to show our local municipalities, the cities and the counties. And a lot of them are very intrigued by the ideas and trying to implement them themselves. So, we've sent out about 4,000 of these so far, and we'll probably have to do a reprint here coming up because we're just about to run out. But this, to me, is somewhere to start when it comes to policy. And it's nice because it's very positive. It doesn't beat anyone up. It just says these are some of the really good players, states and cities that are really doing good things, and let's learn from them. And so it's got great ideas, and our team's has worked hard on that. And I think that's something that we think will move the needle. And we think any good idea needs to be imitated. So that's why we're making this available. I mean, we're not worried about having too much affordable housing built across this country or getting too far in front of this. We want to really make an impact.
So, Clark, help me understand. You wrote the little book, literally the little book, and that's the name of it. Do you have a team of people that are just researching all of this from different states, different municipalities? Like that it looks like a large undertaking to be able to do that much research, put it in a book and say, you know what, these are great ideas. We should make a book about it and hand it out. How did that come about?
Well, we have a natural process in place because in 2018, we started offering the Ivory Prize. We give $100,000 a year to every, or to the winner of 3 areas: construction and design, regulatory reform, and finance. So the best ideas coming from either companies or organizations that are really making an impact. We get applications for these prizes each year. In fact, we're in the process right now. You'll see it also on our website, and you can see the past winners on our website. They're amazing companies, and not all of them have made it because innovation is about risk. But it's interesting to see, we get about 250 applications a year of really good ideas. And then we use the students and our experts to go comb through those, applications and nominations. And we end up with usually about 25 that we do heavy diligence on. And we go out and meet with those folks. We think they're the best companies or the best organizations that really have great ideas. And then the students are learning a ton as they go through the process. They're guided by seasoned managers and also experts that I talked about earlier. And at the end of the day, I think we end up with a really good top 10 group, which we announce each spring. And then we also announce the winners of the prize. But the top 10 and the winners, they all get an opportunity to have interns that we're willing to support. We pay for them to go work for these companies and help them move things along. We not only have we given them a cash prize, but we try to shine a bright light on them so that other investors will maybe give them a serious look. And so the Ivory Prize has been something that we've done, for now since 2018. And it has been the process that has sort of taught us about a lot of the best ideas and the best players that are really passionate about making an impact. And so we took some of the best ideas from these applicants that were in the policy area, and we produced this book of low cost, high impact solutions. Most of the time people think the only way you cut down, expenses, with municipality or whatever is just by, reducing fees or whatever. The truth is there's a lot of friction created. And if we can reduce the friction, if we can increase the timeliness, if we can also come up with ideas that help, them meet their standards, but do it in a more cost-effective way, it's really important. It's not just about the fees you pay. That is a big deal. Any city that really cares is going to be competitive on fees, right? But they've got to have other ways. They got to have this partnership idea. And what I noticed is that the very best cities have a partnering mentality, and they don't mind approaching something with a public-private partnership, and that can really make a difference. And we've done several of those. And in fact, I would say most of our current projects that are underway are with cities or municipalities that have really cooperated with us and said, we'll come to the table too and work on this, because we don't use tax credits. We don't, pursue any other grants for this federally or even from a state level. We just want to go in and do an amazingly, naturally, affordable project. And we can do that if we get a good partnership and a lot of cooperation.
Yeah. So for all of you watching, I do have the Ivory Prize website up here, just so if you're interested and you got a great idea and you want to sign up to be part of that, it's ivoryinnovations.org, and you can go there and find under the programs the Ivory Prize. So Clark, I hope you're okay with me putting that up on the screen while you were.
I love it. And I can tell you, if you get onto the Ivory Prize and you see that there's a company that we've already, vetted, and you want to get to know them, let us connect you. Because one of the best things that is happening with the Ivory Prize participants is that they start to collaborate and share ideas and help one another. And it's really cool.
You know what? We see the same thing on Dave Cooper Live. When we get industry leaders together or people with great ideas, everybody feels like they're on an island by themselves. And then all of a sudden you put two leaders of a new company or a new startup together and the wheels start grinding. And I think that's what it's all about. It's about community, and it's about those partnerships.
So true.
Very much so. So Clark, when you are evaluating, a new innovation, what are some red flags that immediately tell you that, this is probably going to have a difficult time scaling? Is there any red flags when your team's evaluating companies? Is there anything that you look for or, bring out the red highlighter?
The very worst thing someone can tell me is that they're going to roll something out or scale it at such a pace that it's just not realistic or achievable. I'd much rather have someone tell me, hey, I know this is going to be difficult. We're going to work on scaling this in our own market first. We have 2 or 3 key building partners that are going to be working with us, And after we've really perfected it with them, then we want to bring it to you, or we want to go beyond our own state. And I've worked with just recently a really top-notch group called Reframe, and they were one of our winners. They're out of Massachusetts, and these are some really smart Amazon guys that have been figuring out how to do robotics and factory-built housing. And they really would love to come to Utah, and we'd love them to come here because we don't have a really strong factory-built option. We're going to Boise right now with one of our modular projects, and we're going to use Gurdon in this next year. But we don't have a really good option in Utah. So I've talked to them. They're anxious to come, and I'm anxious to see them perform in Massachusetts. So what I'm telling Reframe right now is, you guys are amazing. Let's get it working in your first factory and really cranking. And if you can have the steady flow of business there, then you're going to succeed there. And we'll provide you with a steady flow of business, because between all of our entities, we do 1,000 to 1,500 units a year. I think we could give them a pretty good steady flow, and we have other relationships that could also use them. But I think that's the thing. You got to have partners that are going to be really steady supporters, but you're also better off just proving it in your own incubator first, and then taking it more broadly. I think the biggest mistake folks make is growing too quickly. You can do that with software, because it's like you come out with an idea and you can mass produce it. But when you're talking about sticks and bricks and all the local diverse municipal rules and everything else, and the building codes vary so much from place to place, you've really got to establish yourself and prove yourself up, and then know that you can do it again, one step at a time as you go through the various states.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, you could search our channel. Vikas from Reframe System has been on this show probably a number of times over the years, and they are amazing, and they're doing amazing things. And also Gurdon's been on the show as well. So I'm super happy that you guys are looking at working with them or supporting them in some way. So let's move to industrialized construction. You brought it up. We've watched enormous amounts of capital flow into modular and offsite technology, driven construction. We've also watched some very well-funded companies struggle after getting that funding. From your perspective, what has the industry misunderstood about industrializing housing? Why isn't it as simple as it sounds like it should be?
Well, I think it's what I said. There's so much diversity in the various, states and markets where you need to build. And then transportation is such a big issue. It's just super challenging. I think the only way you're going to go quickly on a national level is if you got one of the big players like Builders First Source, or one of these big suppliers that just says, we're going to go in, we already have a presence everywhere, and we're going to prove it up. I've been pushing Builders First Source to get more involved in factory built modular possibilities. They're a great outfit. We enjoy our partnership with them. They do have a factory in Pennsylvania, and I would love to see them just really do well with that first attempt. And if they do, I think we may be able to talk them into going beyond. But I think when you just throw money at it, if you don't have a real player like a Builders First Source, I don't think it's a wise investment. If you are going to go after a technology that's really unique and rare, and then you got to just make sure they can prove it up in one market. And if they can prove it up in a market, then I think you can continue to invest in them really strong. But you've got to find someone who can succeed first. Right. It can't be all on the come. Yeah, we're going to be profitable in year 3, 4, 5, but right now this is what we're having to do. I don't think that works in this case. In these other startups that are in software, they're doing everything on a multiple of revenue. The reality is they can scale really fast, and all of a sudden they can hit profitability when no one thought it was possible. But when you're ramping up with the sticks and bricks and the cumbersome nature of the building industry, I don't really believe that you can achieve, a really fast ramp up.
Right.
So I think you have to be a little bit careful about the way you look at reasonable timetables to scale. And then you have to have the right partners involved. I might feel different about it if we had the federal government coming in with 2 or 3 of our biggest suppliers in the country and they were going to invest billions of dollars into it, but we haven't seen that yet.
Well, and that's kind of it, right? I mean, if let's say somebody actually had $1 billion to improve housing affordability in America, right? Where should they put it? Because that's like, I mean, you can't just say policy because that's a bunch of people just trying to get policy approved, right? Where does $1 billion go?
I mean, if you could have a Tesla version of what we're talking about, the challenge, think about it. Tesla has plants now in like 3 states, and they can ship their cars easily everywhere, but to really get at scale throughout the states, can you imagine the effort it would be to build factories in so many locations because of the transportation difficulty? Right. You can ship a car a lot easier than you can ship a house. And so you've got to think through a new approach. And I think it's just going to be, I don't think housing is going to happen like that. I don't think someone is going to tackle it and say, this is it. And all of a sudden we're going to have one brand that just reigns supreme. I think what we're going to see in housing is a lot of great little ideas are going to come forward. Some municipalities are going to figure things out and then hopefully others copy them. Some folks are going to figure out some finance solutions working with their state housing authority that are really unique. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the federal government could do something. If you wanted to know the one thing that could have the greatest impact on housing, it would be if the federal government decided that they wanted to do something for first-time home buyers that would allow interest rates to be substantially lower than what we're seeing in the market right now. I'm talking about just improving them by a point. If there was some way to really design a new construct, and that might cost us somewhat as taxpayers overall, but it would help tens of thousands, even millions of first-time home buyers over the next, generation, maybe afford a home. And maybe it's extending the amortization period, beyond 30 years. What are we going to do so that we can get payments to be more attainable for people? There's not as much movement in the area of finance as I'd like to see. There's some cool stuff happening to help renters. There's some cool stuff happening in terms of helping people get some financial education. We've seen some really neat ideas that help build people's credit. And we've seen some cool partnerships that have had an impact on the overall financing. But to really move the needle, we need a generational innovation at a federal level, like the 30-year mortgage was. And could we do that with a 40-year mortgage and then have some kind of, bonding that went along with it that allowed for us to get rates just a little bit lower for qualified first-time home buyers? I mean, I think there's some potential there, and I know there's some people in Congress that would love to see it, but hasn't happened yet.
Right. I've always, Clark, I've always said, how do we get people to ask for a better product, right? Housing built in a factory environment or a controlled environment, obviously it has better quality control no matter how you look at it, so long as the quality control processes are there. I think the industry's done a horrible job at marketing itself in that aspect as well, because if you have enough people demanding it, that also helps drive policy change as well.
That's true. And I've seen the way these factories build. They are tight. There's very little waste. Yep. They deliver a great product. I agree with you 100%, but there's so many logistical complications to getting it, really put into place that I think makes it too expensive. We finally, after working for a couple of years, got this big project we have. It'll be the largest modular factory built project in Utah. It took us 2 years to sort of work the numbers and get it to be efficient enough so that we weren't sacrificing on the bottom line in order to build a factory built project. Sustainability is important, and I never disagree with that. But isn't affordability a part of sustainability. And so we have to learn to do both at once, because if all we're doing is building it more efficient, but it's more expensive, then ultimately it's not sustainable. So,
Yeah. So there's other builders and developers watching this show, probably not to the scale that your company builds to. What would you tell them they should be looking out for in the future? Are we going to be building the same way 10 years from now that we build today, do you think? Where do you see this trajectory of, building science heading?
It's not just building science. It's the combination of regulatory issues with finance and then with the construction and design aspect. So as an example, we've battled for the last 5 years to build a really great project in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City in our Avenues district near our state capitol, which is one of the highest rent districts in the state. And we had a 3-acre parcel that has now 21 individual homes. Each of them has an ADU attached, part of the structure. And it's just been a war to get it approved, because everyone wanted to look at it like it was 42 houses. And what we're trying to say to people is, no, these are 21 beautiful, probably $1.5 million to $2.5 million houses in one of the best neighborhoods. But every single one of them is going to have an affordable solution as part of an ADU attached to it. And very cool. We had a condo tower that abutted us and some really high dense and very nice townhomes on the other side of us. And these people fought us tooth and nail. 250 people came out and fought against our project, spoke out the night that we had our hearing. It lasted forever. At the end of the day, we got our approval. It took us forever. And you know what? We just entered our first home in the Parade of Homes. And finally, some of those people from the tower and from the townhome started to tour. And they're like, our salespeople told us, what were we so bent about? This is beautiful housing, and it happens to have an accessory apartment that would be available for a multi-gen situation, a student, someone who's a nurse working at the nearby hospital, whatever, someone who just otherwise couldn't be in that neighborhood and living in a really fine spot. And they're starting to change their tune. But the point is, we've got to get people to embrace change. We have a different approach than ever before. They have to embrace innovation, even when it's in their backyard. And that's what we continue to talk about. But we need to figure out how to sell it better. But we're hopeful that now that we have this example, we can go show that to many other municipalities. So what I say to the small builder developer is, do a really cool small project and show how it works. And then you can go get others to say, yeah, maybe we could go with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's proof of concept, right? We always have to do that. I know we're running short on time here because you have some upcoming things. So yeah. Let me ask you one last question. When you look at the next generation, and this gets back to what I said earlier about getting back to the workforce, when you look at the next generation coming into this industry, what do you want them to understand about the responsibility and the opportunity that comes with solving for housing affordability? Because we all know this generation, they live on ethics and a mission. They're not the same as you and I growing up. Their passions are deeper.
I agree. And it's sort of like the other question we were just trying to address, and maybe I didn't do it too effectively, but the truth is it's complex and it's exciting, but it requires someone with some real, intelligence to get in and say, we can do this better and differently, and figure out how to put all the pieces together. It's like when we did this Avenues project, it took a focus on policy, a focus on construction and design. And then, as we thought through how it's even going to be financed, figuring out how having that ADU will help someone with their mortgage. All these things come together. And the way we market it and deliver it, I think it's exciting. I hope the up and coming generation looks at housing as one of those really meaningful areas where they can make an impact. That the societal need is so huge, and why can't they just come in and help us solve it? That's what we want to invite them. And fortunately, every year we're hiring about 18 to 25 interns, depending on the year. And these people are amazing. We end up letting them go work for other companies that we featured in the Ivory Prize. So if there's a company watching here today and you want to apply for the Ivory Prize, know that we're not only offering you the potential of getting a little cash that might help you, but more importantly, we're going to shine a light on you, and we're going to make sure that we provide you with some backup support, and you're going to be in a network of innovators that can build one another up. That's it, Dave.
Love it. I love it more than you even know. I love it. All right, Clark, is there anything that we missed today? Is there anything I didn't touch on that you're going to be like, dang it, Dave, you missed that? How did you miss that? I'm throwing it back on you is what I'm doing.
I'm going to say one thing, that I always like to mention, and that is the one thing as we talk about these issues with policymakers, we have to drive through that affordability counts at every price point. Usually when you're battling in a municipality, they'll say, yeah, we'll help you make this more affordable if you're going to really be hitting 80% AMI or whatever. And we're saying, okay, that's helpful, but it matters at every price point, because if I can get someone to move into an $800,000 house that's just more efficient and better, they're moving out of a $400,000 house that opens the door for a first-time buyer. It really does matter. Affordability matters at every level, and that's something that I try to share when we talk about policy, and I think it's something that we need to drive home. That's it.
Hey, listen, I want my kids, your kids, and everybody else's kids to be able to afford a home and live that American dream. And it's much harder to achieve these days. Clark, I really do appreciate you joining us today. This has been awesome.
Thanks for what you're doing, Dave.
Yeah, and thanks for everything you guys do. And I look forward to having some more of your team members on. There's so much more behind this story. We're going to have a blast.
They're a lot better to listen to than I am, so you'll have a good time.
Well, don't go anywhere. I'll come right back to you after the end of the show, so just hang tight for a minute. And for the rest of you out there, listen, we're always looking for new ways to support the show. So if you found value in today's conversation, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. Scan the QR code and consider supporting Dave Cooper Live. We're independently produced, and your support helps us continue bringing you the people, the ideas, and the conversations moving this industry forward. And we want to thank each and every one of you for that. You know, it's what stands out from like today's conversation is that housing affordability isn't going to be solved by one technology, one policy, one company, not at all, right? There's not going to be one source of capital. It also begs the question, do we sometimes spend too much time blaming builders for housing affordability when the builder is operating inside a system where land regulations, permitting, financing, and development requirements have already determined much of the cost before construction even begins? I'm going to leave you with those questions right there. This was a great conversation. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of our supporting members. I'm Dave Cooper. We'll see you next time. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.